Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. So today's video is going to be my September reading wrap-up. Again, you know how this goes. We're going to be talking about all the books that I read in September. I will preface this by saying September was not a good reading month for me. I limited myself a lot. I did not have that many books on my TBR because I was feeling a little slumpy, a little burnt out. I've been really tired. Work's been a lot recently. So I was cutting myself some slack. We also had a lot of events we had to go to, like my brother-in-law's wedding, which was precious, and just a lot of things that, you know, eat up time when you're constantly busy. You don't have a lot of time to read. So it was not the best reading month for me, but I did get some things read. I'm actually currently in the middle of a lot of things that I don't know when I'll be able to finish them. So I did start the Hating Game, and I'm probably going to finish it today, but today is not September, it is October. I also randomly started The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue because when we were on our road trip to the wedding, me and my husband John wanted to listen to something together on this road trip, and a lot of the things that I needed to read or listen to, he didn't really want to. So we kind of settled on this was a good thing that we both wanted to read or listen to eventually. So we decided Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and we got a pretty good chunk into it. So I'm a little bit halfway done with that one, almost done with the Hating Game. I started Shadow of the Gods and I really like it, but I'm really not that far into it because again, I haven't had a lot of time, but I did start it. So I feel like I'm just like in a lot of things right now. I'm starting a book today after I finish the Hating Game that's on my October TBR. So there's just a lot. And I randomly keep getting books like sent to me that I've like won. It's not just like publishers sending me books. I'm not that cool yet, but there's things that I've been like reviewing, like sending little snippets of reviews so that they'll send me a copy of the book. Should have a few of those coming to me, and if those do come, that will scramble everything. So that kind of happened also with this month because I needed to finish one of the books to get a review up before the book came out. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about the things that I actually finished in September. The first book that I finished in September was Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. So if you've been on this channel for a little while, you know I loved Vicious. Vicious is my favorite book ever. And I was really excited to get to Vengeful, but I was a little apprehensive because I loved Vicious so much. And I've heard that not a lot of people liked this book, so I was a little scared. But I really, really enjoyed it. I gave this 4.5 stars, not 5 stars like Vicious, but I still really loved it. I just think the first one was so amazing to me, it just can't be topped. But I don't think this is bad. I really liked it. It's really good. It definitely had a different feel to this because there's a lot more characters you're following and a lot more perspectives. So you, like in the first one, you follow mainly Victor's perspective and then you get like Sydney. And in this one, there's a lot more. And it's kind of, so there's a lot of characters and then it's splitting back and forth between timelines of all of these characters. So I can see why it would be a little bit overwhelming or confusing, but I think it was really great and fun. You do get a new main character in this named Marcella. She is a scary lady, let me tell you. But would I have become her in her situation? Probably. She was really cool. You get to see some old characters come back. It kind of leaves you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And V.E. Schwab did confirm she is going to write Villains number 3, just not for a while. We can all cry together. But there is going to be a Villains 3. And I don't want to spoil anything, so I can't say too much about this book if you haven't read Vicious. And I don't want to spoil this book even if you have read Vicious. But it did have kind of a different feel, as I touched on before, with a lot of perspectives. But I do think something that this book did differently was I think you got to see the powers more. In this book, the powers were more elaborated on. You got to see more of how they work, more of their limitations, or just the different things that this power could do that you didn't get to see in the first book. And kind of because of that, there's a little bit more action. And you get to see a lot of different EOs. So it was really good. I will tell you, there is one line in this book that I audibly like shrieked, squealed, was so excited when this line was said. And I don't even know if I should tell you the line because I don't want to ruin anything. I mean, if I told you the line, you would have no idea who said it, the context, whatever. But I just don't want to ruin anything. But basically there's this line that's like, catch me if you can. And when it was said, I was freaking out. I loved it. It was so great. Man, I'm like way too sucked into this series. I love it so much. And I freaking need this third book. I'm so sad because I know it's like nowhere in sight, and I know she's writing the Threads of Power series, which is like tied into the Darker Shade of Magic. And I know she's working on that before she even touches villains. So it's a little painful, and I really need the third book, but when it comes, it will be sweet relief. So really enjoyed this. If you loved Vicious, I would encourage you to continue. The next book that I finished in September is Beasts of Prey by Anya Gray. And I'm not going to get into this too much because I did post a whole other review video for this book. This is an ARC, so I don't know if anything has changed with the finished copy or not. But I did really like this book. There was a point that I was getting, I don't want to say bored because it's not boring, and it's a really good book, so I don't want to like put into your mind that you shouldn't read this, because I think it's really good, really unique, and really fun, and I would really encourage you to pick it up. I think she's got something good going for her. It is an African-inspired fantasy, and it's a really fun ride, really good. I did get a little bit bored because of the first 200 pages is like the synopsis, which is understandable. She's world building, building character development, and it's the first book in a series, I'm assuming. So it's understandable why it took a while, but it was hard for me to get through. I did give it a 3.5 stars. It's not bad at all. It's really good. But that was just something to be aware of. The jungle, the dark jungle aspects of this, the night zoo, the creatures, the magic, all really interesting and fun. A little creepy. There's parts of this that are a little creepy. And again, I know this is her debut novel, so I don't know how many more books in this series there will be, if it's going to be a series, you know what I mean? Like, it's just very unknown, because I'm sure they're waiting to see how well this book does, but I would be very curious to see where the story continues, if the story continues. The next book that I finished in September is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This kind of caught me by surprise. I wasn't really planning on reading this book in September, but I had like started it a little bit the month before, had found it on audiobook, listened to it while I was driving, and then I ended up finishing it. So I did read this whole thing. I was a little underwhelmed by this book, and I keep going back and forth if it should be 2.5 stars or 3 stars. I think I rated it like 3 stars on Goodreads, but in my review it says I'm not sure if it should be 2.5 or 3 stars. I just found it a little underwhelming. But I wouldn't say it's terrible, it's just not life-changing. And granted, you need to go into the understanding that this is her first book she ever wrote, as far as I'm aware. So, you know, the first thing I've ever read from Sarah J. Maas was A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I didn't love the first book of that one either, but when you get farther into the series, I thought it was a lot more interesting with the world and the magic and the different fae. So I'm assuming it's going to be like that with this, where I'm going to like this series the more I get into it. And this was just the first book, which was meh. It was okay. I did think the assassin competition aspects of this book was interesting, but I felt like it wasn't as big a part of the book as it should have been. I feel like it was kind of like vaguely touched on when they're randomly doing these like different tasks, but I feel like it wasn't a big part of the book, and I feel like that's the whole point. And it kind of more focused on her building relationships with the people of the kingdom and the other assassins. It was just kind of odd, and I would have liked to see more of the competition aspects of why these people are like battling it out to be the assassin, and how their different abilities and strengths are coming out, and not just these random things that are happening. Like this chapter about her eating candy. Like, I could have done without that and just seen more of her fighting skills. But basically, so she's taken out of this insanely guarded prison. She is then supposed to compete to be the king's champion, which is an assassin for the king's assassin role. She's fighting it out with all these other thieves and assassins in this competition, and the competitors keep disappearing, and it becomes apparent that there's these like dark powers at work, and there's something going on underneath that's deeper than it seems. And I do feel like kind of a lot of this book is just build up for the rest of the series, which is understandable why it felt the way it did. And because it's so popular, I did feel like I have some minor spoilers going into this book and the series. So it's like, I don't know what's going to happen with the plot, but I like know some of the characters or different things that happen. So it's kind of hard to get invested in when you know some of those things. So overall, it was okay. And I do want to continue. I do want to find out what happens in the rest of the series, but it wasn't anything that was going to blow me away. The next book I finished in September is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo, and the reason I'm so sad is because the Grishaverse is over! I'm really sad that the Grishaverse is over, and that I think she could write more if she wanted to, but I'm pretty sure she said in an interview she's gonna take a break from writing from the Grishaverse. And I really want more of the Grishaverse. I've heard from different people that if you liked King of Scars, you don't love this one as much, and vice versa. If you loved Rule of Wolves, you don't like King of Scars as much. I really liked King of Scars, and I did like this book, Rule of Wolves. I felt like it was fun. I felt like there was action. I liked the different dynamics. You get to see a lot more of the world of the different cultures, like the Shuhan and Fjerda, and the things kind of underlying all of those countries. I think that was really cool that we got to see those aspects that we didn't really get to see as in-depth before. I love Nikolai, I love Zoya, so having a story where they're more involved is great and super fun for me, because Nikolai and Zoya were two of my favorite characters of the entire Grisha trilogy. Not Alina. And I loved the Darkling, but you know. If you read the trilogy, you know, you know. The cliffhanger of the first book, well, the way they expounded upon the story, again, I don't want to say too much to spoil anything if you haven't read King of Scars. I felt like the story just kind of went in a very odd direction. Some of it was understandable with the battles and things that were happening, but the other thing with the cliffhanger at the end of the first book and how that develops and how the book ends on that development felt very strange. It felt very unlike that character. And it felt like they kind of were trying to do some redemption almost, or maybe just pull the plot along in a way that made sense, but it didn't really make sense for that character. So I didn't love how that was executed, but I also could like understand why it happened. It wasn't just like that character would never do this. It was more so like, I feel like you're just doing this for certain reasons. It's really hard to explain. It's not like this character would never do that, but it seemed like it was forced almost. And it's really hard to explain if you haven't read it and you don't know what I'm talking about, because I would be spoiling a lot of things. But if you know what I'm talking about, if you know what part I'm talking about towards the end and which character I'm talking about, you get me? I did like how we got to go back and see previous characters. That was a lot of fun. And overall, I really enjoyed it and how it all kind of came about. There were some things where I was like, whoa, where is that coming from? The stuff with Nina's whole storyline in both of these books, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but it was fine. I wasn't bored, but I was just not as invested in her story arc and line as Nikolai's and Zoya's. But again, overall, really liked it. I'm really sad it's over. I really want more Grishaverse. I hope we get more in the future. I think she's left it open so we could get more in the future if she was willing to write more or wanted to write more in this world. I do believe she did announce quite a while ago there was going to be a third Six of Crows. I don't know if that's actually happening. I don't think there's any like anticipated date for that. But if it does, I will be pumped and I will read it. I love Kaz. My goodness. So yes, I did really enjoy this. I'm really sad the Grishaverse is over. I'm gonna be in a little bit of a hangover with the Grishaverse. But when Shadow and Bone Season 2 comes out, I'll get over it. So those are all the books that I read in September. It was a really short month, as I said. I'm in the middle of a lot of things at the moment and have a very ambitious October TBR that's probably unrealistic, but I will do my best. And I would love to know, what was your favorite read in September? All right, everyone, well, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.